copy of the meeting will be made available on the EMAB website, as well as the minutes of the meeting and the various materials that we will be referencing throughout the meeting. It does take us a little bit of time to get all of this information posted after the meeting, but it will be there. I also wanted to announce that we do have members of the public and members of the media observing, and thank you very much for taking time to have an interest in our advisory board. Because of the subject matter that we are discussing today, we do have 3 members who have had to recuse themselves, and they will not be actively participating in the meeting, nor did they participate in the draft recommendation. Those EMAB members are Jack Craig, Jim Rispoli, and our chair, Shelley Wilson. So because Shelley is unable to participate, Amy Fitzgerald, our vice chair, will be leading our meeting today, and I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm joining from beautiful Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and I appreciate each and every one of you taking your time out of your busy schedules to participate in this session this afternoon of the Environmental Management Advisory Board. As Kelly indicated, our chairperson was not able to participate in this particular charge. And so what we're going to do today is we are going to go through my colleague, Fraser Lockhart, who was the co-chair of this subcommittee. After we have some opening remarks from Ike White, Kelly's going to have the public comment period for the meeting, and then Fraser and I are going to walk through our report and our recommendations, and we will be opening it up to EMAB members for a vote on the recommendation. At that point, if there's any other board business that needs to be conducted, we will do that, and then we will adjourn. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time, particularly those who've been able to help participate in the review of the report that we're about to discuss. And it's been a busy couple of months, and so I know everybody is very busy, but we felt it was really important for us to be able to provide some input on this very important topic. So Ike, if you have some opening remarks before we get going, I will turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Amy. I first of all, I want to just say how much I really appreciate you all prioritizing getting us some feedback on a fairly short notice basis on our roadmap for tank waste R&D. I realize we didn't give you the usual amount of time to look at something like this. And so I really very much appreciate the very quick turnaround. I've had a chance to go through the draft, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the ideas that you guys shared as well. Just want to sort of open it up maybe by putting it in a little bit of context in terms of why this is so important to me in a couple of different respects. One is, if you think about it, tank waste R&D, right? There's 2 pieces to that are both really important in this case. One is the tank waste mission itself is our largest environmental liability that we have in the cleanup program. In fact, if you just kind of look at the numbers, I think it's the largest environmental liability that exists in the U.S. government. And it isn't just important from Hanford. If you look at the really long time period associated with getting the mission done and the significance of the resources that will be required for getting that mission done, it actually has an impact across the entire cleanup program, not just at Hanford. Our ability to be successful at Hanford also ensures that we can continue to be successful everywhere else as well, because in a world of constrained resources, those things are necessarily related, and the size of what we're talking about here impacts the whole program. So I think it's being able to find ways to get the job done in a way that is as effective and as cost efficient as possible is important, not just for Hanford, but to sites across the country. When you think about opportunities we have for being more effective and more efficient, certainly in a program that's as complicated and as challenging as this one and stretches over the time period that you're talking about, R&D is one of those areas, I think, where we have an opportunity to wisely invest with an expectation of getting a fairly significant return on that investment. And the ideas that we've laid out in this initial roadmap are intended to be, I hope, what will be a long running and iterative program as we go through the development of what we want to do on the tankway side. I should probably start out by noting that we have made recently a lot of progress in our tank waste mission. I just wanted to highlight for you guys, because I know a number of you are interested in it. Continuing to make progress at Savannah River. I think we released a system plan there that shows us getting done around the 2037 timeframe with our tank waste mission if we fund it correctly. At Idaho, just this past weekend, we got IWTU up and running at 100% waste feed, which is a fairly significant achievement for the program. For those of you who followed us trying to get that up and running for the last decade, that is a really monumental achievement for the folks out in Idaho. And at Hanford, we've resumed our electrical testing for the vitrification plant there after having processed a lot of the pre-treated waste with Tisker and getting that up and running. We're also beginning to get into the final couple of weeks before we're able to resume melter heat up, I hope, as we go through some final electrical testing on the power systems for DF Law. So a lot of progress, but a lot of work to be done, right? And that's sort of what I was getting to earlier with the significance of the scope of that mission space. The other thing that I think this connects to more broadly as well, and one of the reasons I really appreciated your recommendations is because they're not just about, for me, when I look at them, they're not just useful for me for the tank waste roadmap in particular, but they're also useful as we think about the broader scope of an R&D program for the cleanup activity at large. One of the things that we're doing in parallel, and at some point over the next couple of months, probably be talking to you guys about ideas for how you might be able to provide input on the broader program as well. But we're also thinking about how we run the broader R&D program as a more integrated activity within the cleanup program. I think the tank waste roadmap that you've seen sort of serves as a model for what a program roadmap might look like, right? We already have a lot of work done on soil and groundwater strategy that was done through the network of laboratories. We've already collected a lot of the R&D efforts in a database from all of our site-specific programs that I think might highlight a couple of other sort of parallel opportunities for a roadmap structure. But at the end of the day, I can envision a larger roadmap for which this R&D roadmap is a very significant component, right? It might be one of the 3, 4, 5 parallel parts of what would be an overall integrated program for R&D activities. So, over the next couple of months, I hope, we'll actually at the headquarters level be developing a draft charter for how we would manage that program at headquarters level as sort of an outline of what the bigger picture roadmap might look like. As well as a thought process about how we would guide that and keep it up to date on an iterative basis, where we would get inputs, how we would incorporate those inputs, how we would keep it updated and manage it going forward. So as I read through the recommendations and the thoughts that you guys had on the tank waste roadmap, I also thought about those in the context of not just the tank waste roadmap, but also the larger program, and they were actually really helpful in both regards. So I really appreciated the thought that you guys put into that on the tank waste roadmap side. I wanted to close and allow as much conversation as possible around your recommendations and thoughts on the tank waste roadmap. But I did want to give you guys one other quick heads up this week. We're making and I think it's actually being announced today, or if not, I'm announcing it because this is a public meeting. We're making a change in a couple of our reporting relationships at headquarters. Our large field managers will now all report to the front office. As most of you probably know, Hanford already does, but we had most of our other large offices reporting through EM3. From a day-to-day basis, myself and Jeff tended to interact directly with our field managers and our field sites because of the importance of the sites to the program. So we're changing the reporting relationships of our large site offices to report directly into the front office. We're also changing the reporting relationships of a couple of other offices that we both work with directly more often than not which is our communications office, and our regulatory and stakeholder engagement offices. So you guys are all obviously very familiar with our EM4 team that does regulatory and stakeholder engagement. So that office and our comms office will also be reporting directly into the front office. It's not a huge change from a structural perspective. The overall organization mostly still looks the same, but that handful of offices basically get elevated in the reporting structure to reflect the way we, for all practical purposes, already operate, which is reporting directly into Jeff and myself. So I wanted to give you guys a quick heads up on that as well, since I have all of you here this afternoon. So with that is all for me. Again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you guys turned this around on such short notice. I realized what I was asking, but I think the work that you guys did is not just helpful in terms of the R&D roadmap on tank waste and Hanford, but it's also helpful as I think about how we might want to manage a broader integrated R&D program going forward. So thank you for that. With that, Amy, I will turn it back to you. Or Kelly, I'm not sure who.
Kelly, I think you're the next item on the agenda. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
All
I
right.
appreciate that. Thank you, Ike. I know everybody is very interested in what you have to say, and so thank you for taking time to be with the advisory board. So now we are at the portion of our agenda where we go over any public comments we have received. We did receive one written public comment, and I will be reading this verbatim. So the public comment is, I very much protest this meeting where only corporations are served. The purpose of an agency set up by the feds is to serve all in America, not just corporations. The fact is, with regulatory capture already of this agency, the corporation and this agency partnership have in fact canceled out any good that can possibly come from the ordinary citizens of this country, and we object to that. We want less corporate involvement. We want the people to have the say on what happens in this country. The corporations are focused on profits and greed. We have a possibly that the people want rules to keep themselves alive from corporate greed. Corporate greed will kill us all if we don't stop it. Our government is supposed to be there to do that. They are failing. I give this agency a grade of 0 for its work for the American people. The laxity of vigor for the good of the American people is astonishing. This comment is for the public record. Please receipt B. Kerr. And that is the only public comment that we received for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kelly, for sharing that with us. So at this point in our meeting, I'm going to provide a little bit of background for the report and the recommendations, and Fraser is going to walk through the answers, the recommendations on each of the 3 questions, and then I will kind of follow up with the conclusions and next steps as part of the comments of the subcommittee. So what I would like to do, and Ike, thank you for your introduction. That helped set the stage for the context of the report. So I do want to take a moment, and in addition to previously thanking everyone for taking their time, I did want to acknowledge the members of the subcommittee that participated in this report and the review. In addition to Fraser and myself, it's Brent Gary, Diane Howard, Kim Kierfoot, Nicole Martinez, Tracy McDaniel, Josiah Pinkham, Michael Shapiro, and Jake Washington. We did want to offer special thanks to Ming Zhu, who is the Senior Advisor for Laboratory Policy for the Office of Environmental Management in the Department of Energy, and also to Kelly, the Designated Federal Officer for EMAB with the Department of Energy, and Alyssa Harris, who's the Federal Coordinator for EMAB for the Department of Energy. So this is the team that has been working together for the last couple of months in preparing the review and recommendations. So as Ike indicated, the Office of Environmental Management is using an adaptive framework to inform the decision making. So I did want to pause for a moment. Kelly or Fraser, are you going to share your screen and put the slides up? We have that.
Yes, I think Fraser is going to be doing that for us.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I will certainly give it a try. I've not done that from Zoom before, but glad to try anything.
So while he's working on that, I will go ahead and continue a little bit about our process and how we got to where we are here today. So the adaptive management framework that EM is looking at, it helps inform their decision making and address priorities to achieve their mission results. And as I looked up the information about adaptive management, this is a term that's used to address potential options for adjusting implementation of a proposed action after a decision document has been signed. In the report, we have a couple of examples of one of which is the Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council chart that discusses remediation of complex sites. So this adaptive management process is a very helpful process when you're looking at sites like Hanford and other challenging problems within the DOE complex that can, as Mike indicated, is more of an iterative process to study and address some of these significant challenges. The other example that we found of this type of process that you might want to take a look at is at the DOE's Office of Legacy Management. They've developed an adaptive management plan to assist at the Rocky Flat site in Colorado. And what this has done is it allowed them over the course of a decade or so to provide information in stages that's helped them to decide when to implement the final steps of their agency's decision to return surface water flow to conditions that existed before the retention ponds were constructed. So we thought, taking a look at this, that the adaptive management framework will be very useful in moving forward with the Hanford R&D Technology Development Program. So there we are. Okay. So we're going to go to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of our specific charge, the Office of EM chartered the Network of National Laboratories for Environmental Management and Stewardship to help develop a research and development roadmap that would help guide EM's technology development investment for breakthrough technologies that could help accelerate the Hanford tank waste mission. So in this roadmap, they identified projects that could be explored and utilized for the near-term benefits for the immediate cleanup, but also to take a look at other breakthrough technologies that might be able to be used not only at Hanford, but at some of the other sites. So Congress appropriated funding in the FY23 Appropriations Act, and the Department of Energy is utilizing a portion of that appropriation for the implementation of the roadmap. So as we look at this, the recommendations in the document, which is rather long, the document itself is about several hundred pages, and portions of it are very technical. So in March of this year, a couple months ago, Environmental Management Office requested that EMAB take a look at the focus areas that are proposed in the roadmap to provide input and to reinforce or assist EM in the development of its R&D portfolio for the Hanford tank waste program. So these results that are in this report are going to be key to helping inform decision-making in a cost-effective manner while interacting with a broad range of government and industry experts for developing and applying innovative solutions. So because the Department of Energy is on an accelerated schedule, hopefully to make some awards within this fiscal year in a competitive process, EMAB decided that while we had a very significant time constraint, we thought it was really important to provide some input into this document and to the overall priorities that were in the roadmap. So because we really had, in the course of a couple months, we really didn't have the length of time or depth to really go through each and every portion of this, we asked the Department of Energy to provide us with several really focused questions. So we can go to the next slide, please. So there were 3 questions that our subcommittee took a look at. One, generally, what does EMAB think of the research and development roadmap? Does the roadmap represent a sound approach for acceleration of the tank waste mission? Generally. Number 2, does EMAB generally agree with the priorities represented in Table 4 of the roadmap? And which priorities deserve the most attention? And did EMAB have other suggestions on priorities that did not appear to have been considered? And then number 3, which we'll talk briefly about, are there any metrics that EMAB would recommend measuring the success of the R&D program to implement the roadmap? So what we're going to do, Fraser is going to walk through the questions and our thoughts on our answers to the questions, and then I will take over when he's finished with that and kind of walk through some of our recommendations and conclusions.
All right, great. Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. As you see up there, charge question number 1, and you'll see through all 3 of the charge questions that we typically go from sort of a overview general perspective to more specific responses, and that shows itself here in charge question number 1. Right off the bat, just as simply as possible, EMAB, the EMAB is supportive of the R&D roadmap. We think that it reflects a very comprehensive consideration of the Hanford tank waste scope. It demonstrates a very systematic process in its development. We were very positive on the criteria-based ranking that shows itself in the roadmap, and also a strong emphasis on the various scarce resources of schedule and funding, and also by year funding, the recognition that this has to be a multi-year program, and things may need to be ranked and considered for when their contributions are going to be the most valuable to the overall program. So we took that all together and thought it was a very good roadmap effort. The structure of the roadmap, we were also very positive on. Thought it was very rational and really visionary to look that far into the distance. EMAB members were aware of past R&D efforts, and over EM's history, the business of R&D in general has kind of gone up and down with various funding priorities. But this roadmap shows very clearly the importance of having to kind of stick with a long-term perspective on R&D, and EMAB believes that that perspective is exactly right. Going a little more specifically in responses to charge question number 1. First of all, we thought that the roadmap really demonstrated EM's commitment to complete the Hanford tank waste mission in an integrated manner that would help accelerate cleanup. The very fact of producing this with the detail and the effort to pull together the group to make this roadmap in itself demonstrates EM has the long-range commitment to get this mission done. Secondly, kind of reiterating our overall perspective, the comprehensive scope and consideration of dozens and dozens of alternatives that included all different sorts of contributions to helping the Hanford tank mission be successful. Some, incremental, small gains, others transformative in their contribution, and literally everything in between. And we thought that was very positive. Third, we like the improvement and results focus of the roadmap. There was clear criteria in the framework of its development, and even included a contracting plan, at least the outline of a contracting plan, which gave EMAB and should give others confidence that R&D efforts that are completed can in fact go forward through a solid contracting mechanism. We liked, fourth of all, that it was flexible and responsive. The very nature of R&D means that there may be setbacks. There's going to be failures, and the ability to learn from those failures, to quickly adapt and respond and adjust, and also to take on emerging opportunities that may present themselves either through technology or lessons learned at another site, or even from regulatory changes. All of those things are very positive in the structure of this roadmap. Fifth, we like that it was very logical and factual in the way that the R&D information and opportunities are presented. A broad range of competing technology kinds of projects, but the systematic way in which they were considered and ranked and presented, we thought was very positive. Sixth, we liked the fact that this roadmap included broad laboratory and university expertise. Some past efforts have kind of showcased maybe one particular laboratory or one particular technical approach or university expertise. And this roadmap is really very comprehensive in its coverage, so that really all those contributing sources of expertise get to offer what they have to help improve the Hanford tank waste mission. And finally, we thought that the roadmap was organized really in pretty understandable language. The business of the Hanford tank waste cleanup is extremely complex. Often technologies work with, but sometimes they work against each other. There are timing issues, a lot of very complex science, but this was made really as straightforward as we think it could be to a large extent, and also made use of very helpful analogies in the construct of the roadmap. So we thought that was also a very positive feature. Going to charge question number 2, which you see here asking generally, does EMAB agree with the priorities represented in Table 4? Which priorities deserve the most attention? And does EMAB have other suggestions on priorities that do not appear to have been considered? Again, for those listening who may not have read through the report or gotten into the details of it, Table 4 is really the heart of where the roadmap is really laid out. It's a spreadsheet style table, which reflects the various major technical areas of the Hanford tank waste cleanup, and the various technologies that were considered, and also how they rank against various different kinds of criteria for total cost, for expected return on investment, time to implement, several other key criteria. We thought Table 4 was well done. We thought it was comprehensive, especially with including some of those key comparison metrics that really made it relatively straightforward to support various comparisons as a reviewer of the roadmap. Again, comparing with some previous R&D planning or roadmap efforts, this Table 4 was fairly straightforward for an outside reviewer to take a look at. That said, it was still pretty complex, but it was EMAB's opinion that to a large extent that was necessary, just because of the complexity of the technical problems and challenges that exist with the Hanford tank waste. And so again, even though it was complex, we felt to a certain extent it had to be meaningful. You can only simplify the issues so much before you start to lose the value of the science involved. There was a comment by several of our EMAB team about the transitional term as it was used in the roadmap. In one case, it seemed to imply that transformational might not fit in with the time frame of the roadmap itself. In another case, it affirmed more of a global kind of impact on technology and its use. And we got that clarified by one of the authors, that in fact it was in the use of the term was intended to be within the time frame of the roadmap and to reflect the more global impact on the overall Hanford tank waste mission. So EMAB was satisfied with that clarification. We did think that further consideration might be given to considering the priorities for the supplemental low activity tank waste, or SLAW as the acronym goes, as was called out in the NDAA in 2017 and again in NDAA 2021. We thought the NDAA made good requests, and we encourage continued work on that, SLAW being so important to the overall Hanford tank waste mission. Going on with some more specifics to question number 2, to charge question 2, we thought as priorities go that grouting and offsite disposal of SLAW should continue to be as a high priority for R&T, again, because of the magnitude of the impact of that effort. We thought, secondly, that maximizing efforts to remove low-level waste from the high-level waste to make that separation, leading to much more efficient overall waste processing, would be very valuable. Third, we continue to see out of the box disruptive kind of technology as being worth consideration. One such idea, the notion of spent fuel recycling, as it might support either energy goals or national security goals. Sorry about the typo there after the word energy. But that out of the box thinking still could be useful, and so that shouldn't be lost as the R&D roadmap continues through its life cycle. Fourth, the notion of combined tank side pretreatment and grouting to specifically as it might be used to respond to emergent tank leaks, thought was a good idea. This idea first appeared as a response to the leaks in tank B102, and we thought that still was worthy of some consideration. The notion of a combined tank side pretreatment and grouting together. Fifth of all, including regulators and stakeholders in the business of deciding on the risk-based waste retrieval sequence, we thought should be a top or a high priority. EM raises this themselves within the roadmap report, and we really just want to add our emphasis to that idea. We think that is vitally important to get the buy-in, and to get the buy-in as early as possible in some of those hard risk-based decision processes. The last four there, I won't go too specifically. They 6, 7, 8, and 9 are very specific to Table 4, and the abbreviations there again speak directly to specific technology items in the table and suggestions as how those technology items might be adjusted either up or down. But again, with the table in front of you, I'd be able to sort out what those mean. Going on to charge question number 3. That was the one dealing with the metrics, asking, are there any metrics the EMAB would recommend to measure success in the R&D program to implement the roadmap? We thought that really the metrics supporting the key considerations are the ones that really are going to be the most straightforward and the most logical. Again, there are key considerations as called out within the roadmap report. Risk reduction to the Hanford communities, to site workers, to the environment is certainly one of those key aspects. And again, may even be individual metrics looking at each one of those, because what may reduce risk to site workers may not result in similar reductions to Hanford communities or the environment. So it may be a much more specific look at risk reduction and detailed look that might be considered for metrics. A metric that seemed to us as potentially useful is the degree to which cross-site transfers are used or could be reduced to make use of the treatment facilities. Cross-site transfers, of course, are very complex and difficult and very time-consuming. Again, so to the extent those can be reduced to allow treatment, that may be a useful metric. Another one that EMAB saw is looking at improvements to the baseline with cost or schedule. and supporting those kind of improvements that would allow benefits in those areas. Another one, kind of in a different category, is metrics that would be important to Congress to really ensure their consistent funding and support for this R&D roadmap. EMAB really believes that the long-term perspective represented in this roadmap is absolutely vital to success at Hanford, that it really needs to have consistent funding and support. And so really understanding those metrics that Congress would like to see, that would make them feel the most comfortable to provide that consistent funding, maybe even asking some of those congressional committees directly what would be the most meaningful to them, could be useful to help support the long-term vision for the roadmap. Finally, going to some more specific items that come about related to to the roadmap, excuse me. We thought that some of the metrics that go around regulatory and stakeholder acceptance, since we believe that will be very important to the success of this roadmap, could be worth trying to measure. A lot of those things are intangible. That makes them much harder to measure. But even so, there are some techniques there, looking at relative acceptability, maybe of different competing technologies, could be one technique. Use of survey methods, recognizing that the Hanford stakeholder population is very diverse, including the state, the local communities, the tribes, many other stakeholder interests. And so survey methods that are used on those kinds of large and diverse populations might be helpful. And in that light, we thought that considering use of consulting organizations that are skilled at gathering public opinion on complex issues might be a worthwhile expenditure to gather useful metric data on a topic like that is, known to be very difficult to measure. We still feel that is important to consider because we know that the regulatory and stakeholder acceptance can influence Congress, and therefore it makes it really important to include. And we would also offer as a perspective that the very act of measuring stakeholder acceptance kind of demonstrates to those stakeholders that their input is in fact important in the decision-making process. So, the old adage that what you measure is known to be important to you, and so that's kind of what's behind that thought. Building on Amy's thought in the introduction, lessons that might come to EM from Office of Legacies Management's use of adaptive management techniques, such as their stakeholder engagement plan at the Rocky Flats site and other sites, may offer some helpful clues on how to, again, deal with lessons and input from stakeholders as the roadmap continues into the future. And finally, the use of quick win kinds of metrics. There are certain quick win projects that are identified within the roadmap. And so metrics that are set up to specifically measure those quick wins could be useful to really get some early support for the roadmap and for its approach. And so with that, I guess I would turn that then back to Amy to go through some of our additional overall comments on the roadmap process and some kind of final thoughts.
Okay. Fraser, thank you so much for that excellent presentation in addressing the three questions that we were asked. So what I want to do is just go through quickly summarizing some of our additional comments and recommendations, and then present a few conclusions for your consideration. And I think the consensus of the group was that we thought that the R&D roadmap was an excellent document and very comprehensive and thorough. We thought that it would benefit from the addition of an implementation timetable, at least for the near term, to get a sense for, the potentially very long time horizon. What would you do, the first few years and so forth. So we thought an implementation timetable would be useful. Secondly, you've heard a lot, and we discussed quite a bit. The general theme of a reoccurrent theme among the reviewers was definitely the need for ongoing community and stakeholder engagement. And particularly with respect to the fact that, the tank mission, I think as Ike and everyone here is aware, it's not only a technical issue, but there's also political, budgetary, and regulatory issues that will impact the implementation of the roadmap. So we believe that stakeholder engagement should remain a very high priority throughout the process, and that would include, broadly defined Congress, state and local governments, tribal members, regulators, workers, unions, special interest groups, and citizens, which have demonstrated, over the past decades, their ability to impact the tank mission, but also influence it and very much interested in it. And one of the things that I think is really important to recognize and continue to recognize is that it's not just the folks living near, Hanford that have that interest and have a stake in it, but it's other sites around the country that can benefit from the technologies that are developed in the roadmap that could potentially either be transferable to some of our complex issues at other DOE sites, or would help reduce risk or potentially free up additional resources that could help expedite the cleanup in some of the other areas. So we think stakeholder involvement, engagement is critically important as you move forward with the roadmap. And three, along with that, is taking a look at how do we do that in a balance of public forums that could ensure the availability and regular meetings with local officials, through local communities. Many of, all of our elected officials and decision makers, have regular meetings. And I know the Department of Energy has been very good about coming and meeting with our communities, and we think this needs to continue as you implement the R&D roadmap. It's already been mentioned, work to build consensus and avoid decide and inform meetings. It's a related issue to stakeholder engagement, and it's more likely as we work together in building this consensus that you're going to have an outcome that is going to be more successful than in the absence of that kind of public forum and engagement. The number 5, emphasize the critical link between R&D progress and mission success. I think the roadmap does an important job of doing that, but I think it doesn't hurt to continually reinforce that, because it's not just the regulators, the communities, and Congress who have to work together to understand that success at Hanford in the tank program is dependent on continued and predictable support for the R&D roadmap research areas. So it's kind of another way of saying what Fraser focused on in some of his remarks, is that this is not a one and done type of investment. It's going to be, the iterative process that Ike mentioned. Some technologies may work well, others less well, but it's got to have that sustained support in order for long-term success to be achieved. The number 6 is continue to expand the use of analogies and models such as the railway model to assist stakeholder understanding of these complex issues. And the information that the report provided with regard to the railroad station analogy, many of your stakeholders are not environmental engineers or have technical backgrounds, and we need to continue to look at communications that help with community and public understanding, stakeholder understanding on some of these more complex issues. And then finally, we had quite a bit of discussion about, maintaining the emphasis for the high-level waste definition at Hanford as a means to dramatically reduce costs and accelerate the schedule. And that has been the focus of a sustained effort over the past few years. And there's a lot of interest and work that has been done on that. And the subcommittee recommends that we continue work in that area to make progress on that front. So finally, just a couple of concluding remarks. Overall, the EMAB subcommittee does believe that the Hanford Tank mission will benefit from the investments in research through the R&D roadmap. The committee further believes that EM should continue to analyze and leverage the tank cleanup lessons learned and technologies at both Savannah River and Idaho that could be applicable to Hanford. These investments are significant, and as I said, it's important to leverage the limited EM resources and look to how they can apply to other sites in complex problems across the complex. Third, the R&D roadmap should complement and integrate the congressional directive to develop an analytic decision-making framework for the supplemental low activity waste. As I mentioned in our committee meeting, subcommittee meeting a couple of weeks ago, I learned another acronym after all these years, supplemental low activity waste, which I will never forget as SLAW. But the importance, the point here being is that this is not an isolated initiative. It's being done in parallel to other initiatives that Congress has directed, very importantly, with the National Academies of Sciences final review of their federally funded research and development center report on supplemental waste treatment alternatives. And they're actually having a meeting, we learned, on June 6th, and hopefully some of our members will be able to tune in or participate in that meeting. The Savannah River National Laboratory was appointed by DOE as the federally funded research and development center laboratory to lead the study. The adaptive management framework, as we have talked about, we believe that this is a good process for DOE to continue to undertake in order to help bring periodic reports of success and obtain input from your stakeholders throughout the process. So we think this is something that's very important, and like the way that they have proceeded at Rocky Flats and some other opportunities to be able to do that. As I mentioned, the R&D roadmap should be used as a model for addressing cleanup challenges at other sites in the EM portfolio. And then finally, we wanted to, again, thank you for the opportunity to provide input into the R&D process, the roadmap, and our members were unanimous in that we would agree to provide ongoing or more in-depth review of the roadmap and its implementation as you move forward. So with that, that is our report.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. I didn't know, Amy, if you wanted to have discussion now or if you were ready to call for a vote of the approval of recommendation. I saw Ike has taken himself off mute, so I do think he has some words to say.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, Kel, I just wanted to just a couple of thoughts. One, I really appreciate the overview and the perspective. Is really helpful to us as we think about how we manage the program. As you guys rightly pointed out, when it's going to take a long time to be successful with a program like this, and so getting something out the gate that's credible is important. But it's also really important to figure out how we manage it successfully going forward, and how we keep and maintain the kind of buy-in that we need to in order to be successful with it. And I think, you know, the focus that you guys had on highlighting, I think, a couple of very key constituencies in terms of how we look at this. Right, one is the folks who essentially think of them as the beneficiaries of the customers of the program, right? Those who benefit from the program, the communities who are around the sites, and the regulators who work with us on this, and other stakeholders. And then another group I'll think of as the investors, right? Which is, you know, Congress doing its constitutional responsibility to provide funds to the rest of the government. You know, thinking about how we make the case to them that this is the best use of resources relative to the cleanup program. So I appreciated the perspectives on both of those things. And if you guys are okay with it, I don't know what the right timing would be, but one thing for you all to think about is, and I sort of opened up by putting this in the context of also a larger effort. So one of the things I think I would like to have you guys help with over the next, this one won't be as rushed, I promise, because I think we have a little bit more time to do this right. But over the next couple of months, we'll begin to develop some draft pieces of how we take this model for the tank waste R&D roadmap and use it as a basis for creating an integrated R&D program at the headquarters level that has similar parallel roadmaps for other key things like soil and groundwater strategy, right? It's one of the things that affects a lot of our sites, and I think where we also need a similar level of effort over that same time frame. We also have an ongoing effort from the Corps of Engineers that you guys are probably aware of. I'm sure that Congress has asked the Corps to take a look at our size and scope of our cleanup program, as well as how we're managing it. We'll get input from that source as well. But at some point, as we pull all these things together, you know, I would really appreciate continuing to get your perspective, one, on how well we've done in addressing the recommendations that you're making here, because my intent is to take these and then fold them into how we're managing the tank waste roadmap going forward, and as well as how we would manage overall the technology R&D program. So I think it would be useful for me to get your perspective on whether we've done that effectively or not as we do that. But that will be probably over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So it won't be quite the same please do this in 2 months request that we did on the tank waste roadmap. So I'll promise you guys a little bit more of a reasonable time frame to do that if you're willing to continue to provide input on this. I think it's something that's very important to the program. And I appreciate your perspective on it. So thank you.
You kept us busy. And mentioning the other thing before I open it up to my colleagues for comment, if anyone has any comment, is the importance, I think, recognize the importance of the relationship with Congress as well. And I know there is, I think, Principal Assistant Deputy Secretary Avery and Ming Zhu are going to be participating tomorrow in the House Nuclear Cleanup Caucus, which I'm really pleased to see has come back in full force after the pandemic. And that's another very important venue to be able to communicate the good work that's being done in technology development. So very pleased to see that. So with that, I want to open it up if any of the subcommittee members or other members of EMAB have any additional comments they would like to offer before we take a vote to transmit the report.
This is David. I don't know where that raise hand function is, so I'm just going to jump in. To the subcommittee members, I really appreciate you guys tackling this. I did not have any time. I've been gone most of the last almost 2 months with work and personal travel. So thank you for taking this on. It's a huge effort and highly notable. 2 very quick things, because when you mention Rocky Flats, obviously my antenna perks up, as I'm sure Fraser's does as well. Just so you know, the LM Adaptive Management Plan that you reference is actually based on the Bureau of Land Management Adaptive Management Plan. So as that process was developed, I don't know, it was sort of after the ARRA, so 2010-ish timeframe, as they're looking to try to make certain decision-making, the model for it actually emerged from the BLM. I don't know if it's been used at other sites. There's been some discussions for that approach at Los Alamos with the chromium plume. But that's where the Rocky originated, was with the BLM. So just in case that's of value for people. The second thing, just in terms of stakeholder engagement, the LM model for Rocky for those issues is actually a little bit different than LM models in general, and is really much more based upon sort of the classic EM stakeholder engagements of the 90s and 2000s, where we had it in Rocky Flats. We had it for a little while in New Mexico with the Regional Coalition, and other communities where there really is sort of this intense focus by design on local governments, the center of stakeholder engagement, because really the dichotomy that was trying to be built, and this goes to the adaptive management plan, was the difference sort of between community education and education on the one hand, and really building political support on the other hand. And so that adaptive management approach, coupled at Rocky Flats with stakeholder engagement, was very much about how do you proactively resolve decisions with the impacted governments, and how do you, through that process, then build the political support to be able to achieve your goals. And so that's where there is a distinction between sort of general stakeholder engagement and building political support.
David, thank you for those helpful comments and additions for the record. And does anyone else have any comment? If there's no further comment, I would like to open the meeting to entertain a motion to accept the report and transmit to Environmental Management Department.
I would so move.
Second from Brett.
Okay.
I will also just comment the thank you to Amy and Fraser for really putting the report together on behalf of the subcommittee group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the report and transmit the report to Environmental Management Secretary. And Kelly, how do you want to do this? A show of hands, or?
I think that we can do verbal, and if we have any nays, then we'll have to count.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of transmitting, accepting the report and transmitting to DOE?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Well, I think the ayes have it. So with that, again, thank you to everyone for attending and participating. And I will turn it back over to Kelly or Ike if you have any additional board business or closing remarks. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or closing remarks that anybody would like to say before I officially close the meeting? Well, I wanted to thank the EMAB and in particular the subcommittee for all of their hard work. I know that this was a very big task in a short amount of time. And as always, you impressively came together and provide us a recommendation that is completely invaluable. We are just so excited that you were able to provide something to us. And not only was it a recommendation, but there's a lot of substance and depth to it. So thank you very much for that. I did want to just give a quick update. We did receive multiple nominations for new EMAB members. And so we are working behind the scenes to get new members in place. And we are hoping that they will be appointed around the October 1st timeframe. So that is great news for the board as well as the department. And we are just looking forward to developing a new charge for you. As you heard, Ike has a couple of areas that he's interested in getting your recommendation on. So we'll continue to work that and make sure that we get that to you with plenty of time to digest and also to provide us a recommendation. And last call for any final comments. Okay, if I hear nothing, then I will officially close this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank
Everybody
you.
be safe.